Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the World Cyber Arena North American Hearthstone Pro Qualifiers. This is the last day of the week for these qualifiers. My name is TJ Osmo Sanders, once again joined by Kevin Monk Dong. We actually just saw a pretty intense matchup between Strife Crow and Purple Drank. Why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown on what exactly happened?
Yeah, it was definitely a very back-and-forth series with both players kind of winning the unfavorable matchups. Purple Drank won Oil Rogue against Face Hunter, and then Strife Crow, he won Face Hunter against Warrior, so certainly unexpected. The final game was definitely the highlight, though, because it was just really back and forth. I was really impressed with Strife Crow at that game because he just played around combo every single turn. If his opponent had certain cards, he would have died, but he made the best plays every time, and eventually he was about to actually grind out the Druid, force him to use combo in a place where he didn't really want to, but he had to in order to just make a play on that turn.
Yeah, he made all of his plays just as awkward as possible. And, of course, Strife Crow will move on to face the winner of our next match, which is going to be Chaki versus Reynad. Chaki, of course, from Team Dignitas. Reynad, Tempo Storm, and he's just left. Okay, turning off the light. There we go. He's back.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, a lot of history between the two. Like you said, in the NESL tournament way back in the day, Chaki was kind of known for BMing Reynad, and that there was a Reddit thread. It kind of exploded, and I've heard Chaki's thoughts on that. There was an interview done with him recently where he basically said, you know, at this point, I'm in a lose-lose situation. If I BM my opponent, people are like, oh, Chaki, what a BMer. I really hate that guy. And if he doesn't BM his opponent, everyone's saying, oh, 0 out of 10 BM.
Yeah, where's the BM? Yeah. He sort of put himself in a little bit of a predicament with that. He actually hasn't done like tournament BM in a long time, but people still associate him with that just because of his time back when he first started to explode onto the scene with the open tournaments and of course all the old NESL stuff. But we can take a look at these guys' decks line up on the screen. Hunter, Mage, Warrior for Chaki, and Mage, Warlock, Warrior for Reynad. And that first matchup is going to be Warrior versus Warrior.
Warrior versus Warrior. So I would expect both players to bring Control Warrior, I guess, but Patron Warrior is also definitely a possibility.
Yeah, Chaki actually brought that Patron Warrior to the Kingwin tournament over the past weekend.
Yeah, it's true, where he got second place.
Of course he did.
Yeah. Again, Chaki, probably more second places than any other player in Hearthstone, but unfortunately the first place has eluded him. It's going to be a Control Warrior Mirror. Yay.
Yay!
What I've always wanted. What I've always dreamed of.
Yeah, and both of these guys, golden cards, but not golden portraits. And slight misplay.
Well, Chaki also doesn't have a golden coin, so we're just going to have to be watching out for which of his cards isn't golden.
Yeah, he's actually got a majority golden collection, except for priest cards.
Well, he's gotten pretty lucky lately. I was watching a stream when he was racing for Black Rock Mountain this morning, and he actually opened up a pack, and one of his first 5 packs, he opened Prophet Velen and a Golden Jiraxis.
Oh, wow.
Pretty sweet.
We'll have to keep our eyes out for which cards are actually the non-golden ones in this deck from Chaki, but very similar hands early on. One thing, Chaki does have the Fiery War Axe.
Yep. He has a Fiery War Axe, and with the addition of the Acolyte that was just drawn by Chaki, I'm kind of liking his hand a little better, because he has a War Axe to deal with his Acolyte, and to deal with the second Acolyte, and he has an activator for his Acolyted Pain. That being said, generally in these Control Warrior matchups, I've heard from Fibonacci, the Warrior, King, God, whatever, Prophet himself, that it's much better in the Control Warrior mirror to be going first, because you can put your threats out just one turn earlier.
Yeah.
For example, you can throw out a Shield Maiden in order to deal with your opponent's Sludge Belcher. You can be the first person to throw down Ragnos.
Yeah.
You can be the first person to throw down Alexstrasza. And everything, all those plays are huge.
Yeah, one of the big things that I notice is that Shield Maiden interaction that you just talked about, but the ability to Shield Slam first. Like if you play your Shield Maiden, your opponent plays the Shield Maiden. The next turn, you can not only Shield Slam your opponent's Shield Maiden, but then reduce their armor so they can't deal with your own. So just small things like that. Well, I guess that's not even a small thing. Medium-sized things like that add up over time.
Chaki's going to get some extra value out of his Acolyte. But he's forced to give up the coin. With the coin, you're able to get more value, get one of those interactions like you talked about. You're able to Shield Maiden, Shield Slam your opponent's Shield Maiden, for example.
Yeah.
But now he's given up that advantage in favor of card advantage.
Yeah. This matchup, as it progresses as well, usually naturally what will happen is one player will end up sort of being the aggressor, and one player will end up sort of playing the defensive route. And a lot of times it is that the case where naturally the player that goes first ends up being the player that's being aggressive, and the player that goes second is the one who ends up playing a more defensive role. And unlike other matchups in the Control Warrior mirror, sometimes being the aggressor is not always an advantage. Like in the Druid versus Druid matchup we talked about before, a lot of times the Druid that has the bigger ramp, the one that is the aggressor that goes first, can just close out the game easily. But a lot of times in this one, the defensive warrior can stabilize later in the game and mount a comeback, especially if you go over aggressive with cards like Grom Hellscream. If you're not using that to finish off your opponent, a lot of times that can sort of be something that comes back to bite you.
Yeah, there are generally two ways to play this matchup, like you mentioned, one aggressively and one defensively, and it really depends on the style of warrior that you play. Again, I have to reference Fibonacci. He's taught me the #1 warrior. He always gets ranked #1 legend every season. He's taught me that his preference is to go more aggressive, to force your opponent not to have the correct answers, not to have those BGHs, for example, not to have those executes against like Alexstrasza, Grom. And also not to have weapons against the mid-range creatures like Sludge Belcher and Shield Maiden. One of the ways you can win in the matchup is by playing those mid-range creatures, Pilot Shredder into Sludge Belcher into Shield Maiden, and your opponent doesn't have the weapons or like the Shield Slams to deal with it. Or if they do have the Shield Slams, they use those cards, Shield Slams and Executes, in order to deal with mid-range minions. So like your high-end minions will be able to come in freely.
Yeah.
Of course, when both players have so many cards in each hand, it's way more risky because they're more likely to have every answer to your threats.
Yeah, usually that style of play comes out when both players are using their hands early to trade off their boards. In this scenario, what's scenario and situation combined? Both players got multiple draws out of their acolytes, so we're in that sort of position where both players have a lot of cards, which makes the decisions actually really tough. Because especially in Control Warrior versus Control Warrior, you have to think a couple turns ahead. You pretty much know, nearly card for card, what your opponent is going to play on these set of turns.
Yeah.
Like all up until you get to that late game where you're not sure if they run like the Alexstrasza, or you're not sure if they run like big creatures like Ysera.
Yeah. Chaki, he could Acolyte and Cruel Taskmaster here, but the issue with that play is, number one, you give up both Cruel Taskmasters, so your opponent isn't threatened for 12 anymore, rather he's threatened for 10 damage with the Grom combo. And also, you might be drawing too many cards. You've drawn if you do that play, you draw 2 cards with each of your Acolytes, whereas your opponent has only drawn 1 card with each of his Acolytes, so there might be the possibility of you fatiguing out to death.
Yeah.
So if Chaki goes for the Acolyte Cruel Taskmaster play, I think he'll have to play more aggressively in the following turns just to make his opponent not have those answers. And it might be a style that Chaki isn't as comfortable with.
Yeah. At the same time, he wants to make sure that he still manages to keep pressure on the board. He doesn't want to give initiative over to Reynad, so that's why he equips a Death Bite, attacks to face. Not only does it chip off armor, but it also puts him in a position where he can basically deal with any threat that's put out the next turn, whether it be Sludge Belcher, Shield Maiden. And that's sort of why Reynad holds back a little bit and just throws out the Powder Shredder, because he knows that most likely it'll eat this second Death Bite charge. But at the same time, he'll have a creature that'll stick onto the board after it as well.
Yeah, like you said, what will probably happen is it'll eat the Death Bite charge, and either Dr. Boom or possibly Baron Gen will come out, depending what comes out of the Piloted Shredder.
We'll see what's in the box.
Oh, okay. So even though it's a 2-attack minion, he throws down the Dr. Boom, which is a stronger play overall, but The issue is, like, I don't feel like Baron Geddon will get much more value later on. Oh, wow. Chaki with his Snapple, of course.
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of his signature. Chaki's always drinking Snapple.
Yeah. And in fact, he tweets about it all the time, too. I'm surprised, Snapple.
So I guess the BGH is coming down here. But what else? I guess to play on curve, you have to play the Sludge Ultra. Plus, you've gotten rid of your opponent's Death Spite charge.
Yeah. And he would have been punished more there, I suppose, if he had just played Baron Geddon. Because now he doesn't have the Boombot on the board.
Although, if you force your opponent to use a BGH on Baron Geddon, I think you're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because normally, like, you can possibly deal with Baron Geddon with a full charge of Death Spite, for example, or the first charge of Death Spite plus a Cruel Taskmaster. Execute into Baron. Okay.
This is quite a bit more value out of it. Now he knows BGH is gone. He's actually going to clear these 2 creatures off the board. It's actually going to be tough to find a way to deal with this. That 5 health is just out of range of a lot of things, but
he has the Shield Maiden.
Shield Maiden and Shield Slam, yeah.
But generally, like, you probably want to deal with this this Shield Maiden with possibly not a Shield Slam or not an Execute. Oh, sorry. You want to deal with the Baron Geddon with not a Shield Slam or Execute. Because I believe Reynad, he's used a BGH. He's used he either used a Shield Slam or an Execute before. And if he uses this Shield Slam now, on this turn, he might run out of removals for a lot of Chaki's late game threats.
That's very true. If he uses it now, then what is he going to have when Alexstrasza comes out or Rag even later in the game? At the same time, though, what other way does he have to match up against this Baron Geddon? He could throw Sylvanas down on the board, which could have been possibly a better option, but
I think he values the Sylvanas slightly more, though.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, Sylvanas is an option to deal with upcoming threats like Baron Geddon or like Alexstrasza or Ragnaros, for example.
The one thing to note is sometimes when those cards are coming down, you don't really have the time to play Sylvanas as a response.
Yeah, sometimes, like, for example, if they Alexstrasza you and you just throw down Sylvanas with nothing else, you're just dead the following turn.
Yeah. But he feels confident enough that he'll be able to play that Sylvanas safely later in the game and get more value out of it.
Yeah, he's not in any danger at this moment. Sitting at a fairly high health with a lot of armor as well.
Well, there goes the second Cruel Taskmaster from Chaki. So, as one of the asides that you talked about earlier, he will no longer threaten 12 damage from the Grom Hellscream combo. He does have a really annoying board to deal with, but actually not really.
Yeah, this Fireworks can clear the Cruel Taskmaster, and then yet another Pilot Shredder will come down for Reynad, which means that will probably yet again tank that Death Spite. So these Pilot Shredders are going to be really valuable for Reynad, but because he put in Pilot Shredder, perhaps he took out something like a Ragnaros out of his Control Warrior. And even though these Pilot Shredders look good, you have to account for the opportunity cost. Sylvanas is interesting as well, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the best you can hope for is a steal on one of these creatures, of these smaller creatures.
Yeah. I guess what the Sylvanas does is it locks Chaki out of an Acolyte of Pain follow-up. So that actually, knowing the hands, that's actually a pretty good play.
Yeah.
And whoa, going ham at this moment. So, okay, that's really interesting. Now, basically, Reynad is going very aggressive. He's going to force his opponent to clear the Sylvanas with his weapon, if possible.
That's actually a really smart play because put him at 14. Like you said, clearing it with the weapon, and he also has 12 damage next turn plus Fire Warlock, so a total of 15. Pretty much 15 guaranteed damage.
Chaki does have a lot of answers, though.
Yeah. Try and reduce He's going to be able to gain a bunch of armor for this, and most likely...
Well, he lost the Cruel Taskmaster, which is probably the minion he wanted to lose the most.
Yeah, because he's the only one that he could actually clear with the Armor Smith once he goes to the other side of the board.
Yeah, never lucky as Reynad.
That's a whole lot of armor that he just gained as well.
Yeah, so Reynad's like, okay, you had that, of course, and you got and I got the worst one, of course. That's my Reynad impression there.
I mean, that's not even that tough of a play to piece together, to be really honest.
So yeah, Reynad in the previous turn, he made a fairly inefficient play in order to set up that lethal.
Yeah.
And because he doesn't have that lethal anymore, he's fallen pretty far behind. Still anyone's game, though.
He's mousing over the Gromish Hellscream here, but I don't know if that's just because he wants to look at it.
It's pretty.
Or if he's actually thinking about playing it, because it'd be super dangerous. Because like I said, a lot of times the player that's over-aggressive with their Grom Hellscream earlier in the game is punished.
Yeah.
Because then they don't have a reliable way to close out. And they can't threaten that damage, which is another big thing. So much health just being gained here.
Yeah, I like how Chaki is he's making use of these Armor Smiths, because generally the Armor Smiths aren't very valuable in this matchup. So another point goes to Chaki for he's able to use a card that's typically not good in the matchup to great effect. And another example of that is Brawl. Typically Brawl isn't very good in the matchup, but Chaki will have a very good Brawl turn right here if he chooses to use it.
Yeah. It is possible that he might want to wait until he sees Dr. Boom. Because a lot of times in the mirror matchup, what I'll do is save Brawl for a big Boom turn.
I think he might have considered Brawl if something big came out, but
that looks like
I'm not sure. Yeah, the Sledge Belcher deals with this board perfectly, so Brawl is not necessary at all.
Yeah. If something bigger comes out of a Pilot Shredder, Millhouse, Succubus.
Yeah.
Sunfree Protector is actually, I think a 2-3 is slightly above average in stat points. And of course, you sort of want that to be weighted more on the attack than the health most of the time. I don't think you really have...
Whoa. I did not expect that.
He really wants to utilize this Grom, but I feel like Dr. Boom is such an enticing option that turn, especially since he had the opportunity to use Shield Block as well to try and see if there was anything else that could change his play on top of that. Now it's just going to get Shield Slammed.
Well, you have an Armor Smith on your side of the board, and there's a Brawl in your hand.
Oh, yeah. Brawl could be an even better way. And then you have Shield Slam just in case anything comes out. Or Fire War Axe. Your opponent also does have an Armor Smith, though.
Yeah, that's true. Do you kill your opponent's Armor Smith? No, I don't
Just
think so.
If you kill your opponent's Armor Smith here, it reduces the chances that you
Yeah, I think,
lose the Brawl.
Like I said, this is one of those turns where you get Brawl value, where typically Brawl isn't good in the matchup. So you might as well go for it.
Yeah, he has 2 cards remaining. You're never going to find a Brawl that's better than this. And even if Grom does come out of this, which is like worst case scenario.
Okay, it's the Armor Smith.
Of course it's the Armor Smith. But it is the opponent's Armor Smith. Alright, so now Reynad has given up his Grom Hellscream here, so he doesn't have a reliable way to close out the game unless he gets overwhelming control over the board.
Yeah, it's probably unlikely that'll happen with so many removal options in Chaki's hand.
2 Shield Slams, BGH.
You might even just Shield Slam here instead of BGH, because the board that Reynad has is really good at dealing with BGHs.
Yeah. And there's a possibility, though, that he might be thinking, what other targets could BGH have? Like, you're going to have more opportunities to use Shield Slam than BGH, possibly, for the remainder of the game. So even though it is easily dealt with here, he might not be confident that he'll be able to get value out of that BGH later on.
Execute's not good now, but at least I'll have an answer for Grom in the future turns. If this... Oh man, if this Sylvanas doesn't die.
It's hard to tell what if the better play is to trade in this Armor Smith though, but just in case, this would be best case scenario. Sylvanas dies, and it doesn't. But either way, that's Reynad's last card in his last bit of removal. This Shield Maiden is going to have to go a long way.
Yep. Classic Control Warrior though. Both players are at absurdly high amounts of HP and armor.
Mm-hmm. Chaki not so much, but he has stabilized.
Yeah, and he's used fewer resources. Like he still has the Grom left in his deck. Iron Beak Owl.
That's not going to help him out.
So basically, the only Iron Beak Owl in this deck left is
Ouch.
the Sylvanas. You can Iron Beak Owl Acolytes, but both have been used from Chaki, and you can owl the Sludge Belchers, but it's really not that useful.
Mm-hmm.
So Rag will be hitting Reynad for 8 points of health every single turn.
Yeah. And it seems like Reynad needs... Does he have any shield slams left?
Not really sure. Whoa, so this is Chaki's second BGH.
It is.
So yeah, that might be a reason why he chose to use that BGH instead of a shield slam in the previous turn, because he knows he has two, and he knows the shield slams are more versatile.
Yeah.
All right, go Slime.
I mean, if Slime comes out, he's in a little bit better of a position, but it's still just super rough. He's expended a lot of his threats. Oh,
Okay.
Well, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Well, it's still good.
Mhm.
If he's able to draw a weapon, it could be good. We might even see like a shield slam or a Grom into this owl. Oh, never mind. There
Or
it is.
Gorehowl.
So we can tell. Wow, this is actually an amazing deck for the mirror. 2 BGHs and 1 Gorehowl.
And a Gorehowl.
It makes sense that why Chaki was playing so defensively in the opening turns, because he knew in the long game he had the bigger, the better control deck for the matchup.
Yeah. I do like Reynad's deck with the Powder Treaders. It gives him the opportunity to get really far ahead with a big board early on, but against the mirror matchup, usually that doesn't affect him that much.
Yeah, and there's a funny dynamic in the Warrior mirror in tournaments where both players, they don't know who has the bigger deck before going into it.
Yeah.
So one player, he might be going control-ish, where he really has to be on the aggressive side. And that was Reynad in this position with 2 piloted Shredders. And so far, no really good big threats.
Yeah. I think we are getting towards the end of these guys' decks here.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can get a count on their cards. Reynad knows that as soon as he throws down this Barongeddon, it's just going to get eaten up by the Gorehowl. So
2 cards for Reynad, 2 cards for Chaki. So
okay.
It's pretty amazing. Chaki, I believe he got 2 cards from each Acolyte, whereas Reynad only got 1 card from each Acolyte. But I believe Reynad's used both Shield Slam, and Chaki has only used 1 Shield Slam. So it kind of evens out here.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sure StrifeCrow is watching the stream right now, listing all of the cards in these decks, because he'll probably be able to see all 30.
Yeah. I don't really know what Reynad is waiting for here with this Barongeddon, but I guess this holding on to this last thread is going to be the only way that he's going to be able to pull out a win.
Yeah, I think the Gore. Oh, do you know how much attack the Gorehowl has? 6.
It's only attacked 1, so even if it clears off this Cruel Taskmaster, it'll still be healthy enough to get the Barongeddon. And that's assuming that he doesn't have another Shield Slam. I mean, he's got Shield Slam, BGH, and Execute available as removal. And it looks like he's just going to fatigue him out and maybe use Grom as a 4 damage burst for...
Reynad's deck is actually very anti-aggro, or more mid-range actually.
Yeah.
Because we haven't seen Alexstrasza or Ysera or Ragnaros.
Yeah.
Or Gorehowl. So all the top end is gone from this Warrior deck.
Yeah, with he's 2 piloted Shredders. I'm trying to think what else he put in the early game.
Iron Beak Owl.
Iron Beak Owl, yeah.
That's all I can think of, really.
Yeah, that's all. It's kind of interesting to think that, hey, what actually is he cutting? Or is he?
I guess he has 2 shield blocks and not all warrior decks have 2 shield blocks.
Yeah. I think the general consensus among a lot of top-end warrior players is that 1 shield block, 2 shield maiden.
Okay, so Alexstrasza is going to come down.
Yeah.
We're going to see Reynad's last card. Hopefully it's... Oh, it's Ragnaros, actually.
Okay.
Okay. So he didn't cut Ragnaros.
I was going to say, this sort of has to be a big threat because I just don't see any of the way that he could top out at Grom.
Yeah, but unfortunately we know that this game is already over because there's just too many threats. Like, if you just match up the threats for each player, Chaki has 2 answers, or 3 answers. He has BGH, Shield Slam, Execute, and that's way more than enough to deal with Baron Geddon and Ragnaros, even if Ragnaros hits Alexstrasza. And whereas Chaki has Grom and Shield Maiden, and Reynad doesn't have an answer to both unless Chaki is able to play both at the same turn.
All right, Concede comes out, and that was I mean, Warrior vs. Warrior is always a slugfest.
Yeah.
Like that. It's rare unless one Warrior gets a huge advantage or like a really early Alexstrasza that they can just piece together a victory early on. A lot of times it goes down to that fatigue, or they hold on to their big threats later on, and the player that's been able to hold on to the most removal into the late game is the player that comes out on top. So Chaki is going to take a 1-0 lead, and he's going to find a win with that Warrior.
Reynad, unfortunately, he wasn't able to take that game, but I felt like he made a lot of good plays in the mid-game, setting up lethal with the Grom, and I think he did that mainly because he knew his Warrior deck wasn't equipped for the long game. He didn't have Alexstrasza, he only had Ragnaros, he didn't have Ysera, he didn't have Gorehal, so he basically needed to end the game early. Even though it was a mirror matchup, the decks were uneven.
Yeah, that's true.
Reynad, he wasn't able to go into the late game at all.
Yeah, the one good thing for Reynad is that his Warrior deck is actually going to be pretty useful coming up here for the next couple matches. Chaki's next 2 decks, the decks that he still has to win with, are Hunter and Mage. And no, just as a guess, I suppose, Chaki is running the Freeze Mage. He's been pretty vocal about how strong he thinks the deck is, and he has tended to go more towards the Freeze Mage side when bringing Mage in the tournaments in the recent past.
Yeah, I feel like... to be honest, all other types of mages right now aren't doing really well in the metagame.
Yeah.
The mech mages and the tempo mages, those were the other popular types of mages. They've been kind of getting shut out by Zoo because Zoo has been so popular lately.
Yeah.
Zoo, one of its advantages is against everything except Druid, I feel like it has an overall better matchup. And also, the Zoo matchup against mech mage is favorable towards Zoo.
Yeah, so it's sort of a liability to bring it when you can assume that a lot of players will be bringing the Zoo. So we'll have to see what this next matchup is. It is going to be Chaki going with the Hunter. Out of his 2 classes, if he's assuming that Reynad's going to go with the Warrior next, the Hunter is the one that's more likely to win. If our guess is correct and his second deck is Freeze Mage. But this matchup is actually super tough.
Yeah, very tough. We saw Strifecrow win the matchup, though, by just getting a lot of early threats in, whereas his opponent, Purple Drank, he wasn't able to deal with those threats with like a Fireworks in the beginning.
Yeah, and like you talked about, we saw that earlier with the Strifecrow versus Purple Drank matchup, that the Hunter still does have opportunities to pull out a victory here. And we are going to jump at this one. It is a face Hunter, of course. It is Chaki. Chaki was one of the first players to start putting Worgen Infiltrator in his Hunter decks.
Yeah, that was at the ESL Legendary Series Finals, right?
Yeah, and since then, it's basically become a staple in most, if not all, face Hunter lists.
Yep. There is the exception, though, of some players have decided to put in Argent Squire instead of the Worgen Infiltrator, and that's kind of a card more teched out towards the mirror and perhaps more teched out against Zoo.
Yeah, because it allows you to trade 2 for 1 with those first couple 1-drops. Trades 2 for 1 with like Leper Gnome, Worgen Infiltrator.
Yeah. We do see, though, that Reynad has the Fireworks in his opening hand, so he'll at least be able to deal with some threats. A bit maybe slightly inefficiently here.
Yeah.
Again, the decision to coin out the Leper Gnome as well, it's slightly more aggressive, but it does run into the problems if your opponent does have a Cruel Taskmaster, and the Cruel Taskmaster will be able to 2 for 1.
Yeah. And Reynad does actually have a lot of life gain in his hand as well, but life gain can be sort of ineffective against hunters at times if you are just gaining life and not finding ways to remove whatever the hunter is putting onto the board.
Yeah, I feel like the perfect example of that was Teray versus, do you remember who he lost to?
I think I actually still have the sheet here.
Well,
no, I
yeah,
don't.
he lost to a player where basically what happened was he had a lot of heals. He had 2 antique heal bots.
Yeah.
And he had two shield minions in his hand as warrior against Face Hunter, but he just wasn't able to deal with the minions on board. So even though he was healing for lots every single turn, it just wasn't enough. And I just remembered it was against Firebat.
Firebat, yeah.
So again, yeah, just a lot of damage on the board. And Reynad can deal with some of it. And if I forgot to say, of course it's tougher. That's obligatory, right?
Yeah. Especially against Reynad.
Oh, no.
He'll always say that he always gets
Hufford,
but never gets Huffer.
I see.
Forever Leok.
Bit unfortunate here, though.
Yeah. You mentioned yesterday, you said the worst hand possible that you can get as a face hunter is double explosive trap, double mad scientist, Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That is the absolute worst hand that you could possibly ever have as a face hunter.
Maybe like throw a quick shot in the next few turns.
Yeah. Just something completely inconsequential to what you're trying to do. He's kind of curious here. There have been a lot of face hunters recently who have put in freezing trap.
Well, I think he's actually more afraid of snake traps here.
Yeah.
And especially the play of playing this trap plus the knife juggler on the same turn makes him more wary of it.
Yeah. Because that combination is pretty deadly. It can straight up win hunter games if they can get snake trap developed plus knife juggler on the board, because a lot of times you're spending a turn against hunter to develop a threat, and if some of those juggles hit the threat that you're trying to take out this knife juggler with, it can kill it before it's able to train into the knife juggler. Now, of course, this pilot shredder is pretty big. He's going to take the risk.
And he's rewarded for it.
Pays off.
He's extremely rewarded for it, actually.
And now he can actually play a threat and armor up if he wants to throw down this piloted shredder. Because of the pint-sized summoner. You might as well take advantage of it while you have the the extra mana.
I feel like it's not particularly valuable on this turn because you have a Sludge Belcher anyway. But in future turns, it'll become really valuable. It might even force Chaki here to trade into the pint-sized summoner. But now that he's drawn Unleash the Hounds, I don't think so. I think just go straight for face. Hope your opponent overdevelops the board, and then use your Unleash the Hounds to punish.
Yeah. Our spectator showed us that it was explosive trap, but we already knew because the other explosive trap is not glowing.
We also saw it being played from the hand.
We also saw it being played from the hand, but thank you anyways, spectator.
I mean, if we were Goldfish and we had memory spans of 3 seconds, or if the viewers had memory spans of 3 seconds, that would have been very valuable.
I guess that's what our spectator thinks of us. He thinks we're Goldfish. I'm offended.
So, not many plays here. There is the possibility of Baron Geddon on 6, but I guess that deals with the board, but it also deals more damage to you.
Yeah.
But with this line of play, I think we are seeing Baron Geddon.
It's a little rough that he got something with 2 health. He might actually change his plan here.
Yeah.
And just play the Sludge Belcher. In which case he would want to play the Sludge Belcher first before he trades, so that he can weave in and armor up.
Reynad thinking very hard here.
Yeah.
This is actually like both plays have value, have merit.
Yeah. I like the Sludge Belcher play better just because you can use the Puddle Stomper to trade into something the following turn.
Yeah.
Because you're basically just giving away your piloted shredder just in order to have that clean board. And this way it's still going to be tough for him to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Puddle Stomper is actually really valuable here. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons Reynad decided to go for this line. Chaki, it's very unfortunate he doesn't have an owl. I feel like every time I play a face hunter, like if I throw a taunt down, they always have the owl.
Yeah,
but
confirmation bias.
I have to think that more and more these days, the second owl is being cut from face hunter decks. So
yeah,
it's very possible here that Chaki doesn't have the owl here.
Especially with quick shot being added into the card pool, a lot of players are trying to find ways to make room. And they think, well, what's the card that sits dead in my hand, usually the longest? And a lot of times that's owl.
So do you give your opponent the ability to play a Grom the next turn? Do you give him one more turn where Alexstrasza isn't out? Just speed up the process, or do you just play it nice and slow? You know, back in the day when Starving Buzzard Unleash the Hounds was like completely unnerved, just playing it really slow is actually valuable because you just could draw out through your entire deck and deal damage way too fast for your opponent, even a warrior opponent to deal with.
Yeah. Or even if you go to the days of like the Cult Master Unleash the Hounds, which wasn't too long ago, you could play it a little bit slower and then use Cult Master Unleash the Hounds to just sort of literally draw through your whole deck. Wow, so much life gain. It looks like Chaki's going to be in a pretty rough position.
Well, just shield slam everything.
Yeah. I mean, you're really not going to find much larger targets than a 2-1 to shield slam.
Yeah, the best you could shield slam in this matchup is a 4/4 Misha, but one Animal Companion's been used already, and you pretty much have a lot of answers for those Mishas anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well slam one once.
This is so... Oh, man. A Spectral Spider. Okay, yeah.
Oh, a little bit too late here.
Yeah, he's just got so much health to get through now. He's got 23 effective health. Even if he owls here, plays maybe an Arcane Golem, and then goes for it.
Yeah, I think at this point, giving your opponent extra mana is completely okay. I mean...
You're going to lose anyway.
Yeah, you're going to lose anyway. Still pessimistic, but... like, you're giving your opponent Alexstrasza anyway. And actually, you know, now that I think of it, Chaki knows that Reynad doesn't have Alexstrasza.
That's true.
So you might as well give him all the mana that he needs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here comes the Grom.
Grom for 10. He's going to activate the explosive trap, and just, pretty much he's guaranteed to outrace his opponent.
Yeah. The one thing that he would get punished by here would be like a Hunter's Mark.
Is that... I'm not even sure if you're, like, quote-unquote punished for that even, right?
Yeah, I suppose not.
Because it'd still be a pretty good play, and you're probably still going to win anyway.
Yeah. The second explosive trap. Such a dead card. It's been there since the beginning, and he hasn't been able to find time to play it just because he had the first one up for so long. And now with double unleash, Reynad is not going to overextend it in the board. That's pretty much a given. The most hounds he'll probably ever be able to spawn is 2.
I remember back in the day when, again, when Buzzard Unleash was a thing, the strategy for Warrior was actually just to have 1 minion on the board at all times and try to fatigue out the Hunter. That was the optimal strategy.
Wow. That sounds terrible.
Sounds awesome. I love playing Warrior against Hunter.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're playing Warrior against the Hunter, if you're the Hunter player, you feel like you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Just throw everything out there.
I mean,
charge creatures,
as
hero
the Hunter player, that matchup was like still kind of fun anyway, because you had turns where you Buzzard, Stone Tusk Boar, into Animal Companion, into Animal Companion.
Yeah.
And you draw out your entire deck.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the times.
Well, I mean, even though this has seemed pretty grim for Chaki, he still managed to put Reynad at 10.
In which case, Reynad will immediately go back to 17.
Yeah, most likely. There's some merit to Baron getting here, but it's a little bit risky just because he'd basically be negating his hero power every single turn.
Yeah, but I don't think that's true. But I think this game will end in 2 turns anyway.
Yeah.
So either Baron Geddon or the Shield Maiden play would have been fine. There's basically no way for Chaki to take this game, and As predicted, Reynad, even though he lost the first game with Warrior versus Warrior, he's able to take this game kind of a free win for the Warrior because again he was facing against Face Hunter, and he probably would have been facing against Freeze Mage even if he had lost this matchup.
Yeah, and I'm sure Chaki isn't really too upset about that, just because that sort of frees him up to play his Hunter and his Mage against maybe some better matchups.
Yep.
So I don't think he was really had too much riding on that game. But of course, Reynad still has the Warlock and the Mage left, and Chaki still has to find a win with that Hunter and still has to find a win with his Mage as well. I'm curious to see what Mage both these guys are bringing. We've talked about it a little bit. Freeze Mage seems like the overwhelming powerhouse as far as Mages go right now.
Of course. Meanwhile, I have to think that Reynad will probably be bringing Zoo as his Warlock. Because after all, he is the father of Zoo, as he is the father of every single deck.
Because he's the father of Hearthstone.
And Forsen is his father. Or maybe it's a door. Who knows?
Forsen is the father of the entirety of Twitch. Reynad is only the father of Hearthstone.
So yeah, if it's Freeze Mage versus Freeze Mage, this matchup, we don't get to see it much, but it's actually really interesting because you'll find players making really strange plays like just blizzarding an empty board, Kona holding your own minions sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to get those minions out, or just get those spells out because they're completely dead in the matchup.
Yeah.
And some tech cards that are really good in the matchup is actually Malagos is really huge because Malagos it's a way for your opponent to you to burst your opponent down, and Freeze Mage typically they can't deal with opposing Malagoses anyway.
No.
So if Malagos ever comes on the field, just even without Emperor Thorazane buffing it to 8 mana perhaps, it's almost game over if your opponent can't kill you in the next 2 turns.
Yeah. Mages just don't have ways to single target remove on 1 turn. Usually it takes them 2 turns to do it, and by the time if Malagos comes down, you really only need it to survive for that 1 turn to be able to make complete use of it. I talked to Oskaka, who is a big lover of Freeze Mage. He considers himself one of the best Freeze Mage players in the world, about the mirror matchup quite extensively the other day. And there's so many intricate things that goes into a Freeze Mage in general, but in particular the Freeze Mage mirror, because there's a lot of really tough turns that you have to make, especially later on in the game, when you have to get your opponent low enough to pop the block and have them be low enough for you to kill them the following turn. Because a lot of times a situation that they'll get in is you pop the block when they're at 6 or 7 health, and then all of a sudden they Alexstrasza themselves back up to 15, and then you don't have enough burst to ever get them back in range of killing them again.
Yeah, that's not going to be a problem that Reynad will face, I think, especially because he kept the Archmage Antinized in his opening hand. And I feel like that's probably because, or one of the reasons is because he has the coin in his opening hand, which lets him get even more fireballs. The problem, again, with, like we said, there's probably an abundance of cards in your hand sometimes that you just can't get rid of. And being player 2, you start off with an extra card and you start off with a coin, so that's even more of a problem for the player that has the coin.
Yeah. A lot of burst early on in combination with an early Alexstrasza is a deadly combination. And that coin, like you mentioned, that coin is basically a fireball, an extra fireball, a free fireball.
Yeah, not many people know this because Chaki is mostly known for being an aggro player, but he's actually one of the first proponents of Freeze Mage back in the ESGN days. Him and Reels, they piloted Freeze Mage very well, especially in the team match of ESGN. I don't know if you remember back in the days where 4 players from each team, they would sit together.
I remember.
And they would, it was just a really interesting format where they sat together and they figured out plays together as a team.
It's like a collaboration sort of Hearthstone match. And it has yet to be done again. I don't think anybody's ever attempted the team.
Well, it is
battle.
coming back with Archon's hosting a team match pretty soon. I'm excited for that. I believe it's actually going to be next weekend.
Well, they'll actually all sit down as 4 players?
Well, 2 players from each team.
Okay.
A little free advertising for Archon here.
Well, there are 3 Archon players that will be at the World Cyber Arena LAN qualifier, so I feel like We're no stranger to Team Archon around here.
Yeah. So this is actually really awkward for Reynad. It's actually very possible that Chaki could overdraw him at this point.
Yeah.
So he actually has 9 cards in his hand, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And if he might even have to like coin Frostbolt the Mad Scientist, because if he doesn't, Chaki could force him to draw up to 3 cards in the next turn.
Yep.
Or coin Doomsayer, perhaps.
Yeah, but either way, he has to throw away this coin, and
Yeah.
this is actually a big deal because of the reasons that you talked about earlier with the Archmage Antonidas.
Okay, so coin Blood Mage Thalnos. So one way that Reynad could get punished here is if Chaki runs Cone of Cold.
But doesn't draw it.
So Chaki can burn 1 card from Reynad here.
Yeah. One of the things about that Osaka was mentioning about Freeze Mage is like sacking your Mad Scientist in before you draw cards, if it's available on the turn,
Yeah, that's huge.
to basically guarantee which secret you're going to get and reduce the likelihood that you pull a secret from your hand or from your deck. Because if Ice Barrier is your next card and you have a Mad Scientist on the board, you're basically effectively wasting a draw by not trading in your Mad Scientist, which is something that even Freeze Mages at the highest level don't do. You'll see them draw first and then trade their Mad Scientist later, which
Oh, yeah,
effectively
definitely.
wastes them a draw.
I've seen that so many times in tournaments.
Yeah.
Chaki, he'll have a lot of interesting decisions to make on this turn. Does he ping the Acolyte or does he ping the Blood Mage? And which of his spells does he use?
He can Frostbolt the Blood Mage and then ping and,
Oh,
and
okay.
attack. This will make him overdraw. Which,
this will be fun.
which one of the biggest ways you can win in this matchup is by forcing your opponent to overdraw crucial cards in the matchup.
So, Blizzard, that's useless.
Yeah.
So quite unfortunate for Chaki that Reynad didn't overdraw a really valuable card.
Yeah, really valuable cards being basically any pieces of burn, Alex Straza.
Or the Archmage Antonidas, which we know is in the hand. And
Yeah.
if Reynad runs Malagos, that's pretty much the best card in the deck to burn.
Yeah. Still an awkward position because he can't draw cards just because he risks not having anything to play in overdrawing. So he just plays Doomsayer here. Doomsayer, another one of those cards that's nearly useless in the mirror matchup.
Yeah.
It does have more use than, well, it can sometimes have more use than, say, Frost Nova, but
Yeah. I think this Mad Scientist is just going to die without attacking here. You pretty much can't pop the block anyway, I feel. Or rather, you can't pop the barrier anyway with creatures on the board. All the creatures you have are Alexstrasza and Archmage Antonidas, and you're not guaranteed to be able to attack with them anyway because your opponent just has so many freezes that he'll just want to throw away, or he won't use in the mid game anyway.
yeah, this is really awkward for Chaki just because with a Mad Scientist on the board, he has 3 secrets in his hand.
So Chaki opts to go for the Ice Barrier over the Ice Block, even though it's more useless. And I think that's because it's to open up more options in the future. If he played the Ice Block here, he wouldn't be able to play 2 Ice Barriers in the future, for instance.
Yeah, now this is really weird for Reynad because he wants to Arcane Intellect here, but that'll put him at 10 cards. And the only other card he'd be able to play on that turn would be Burn or his Acolyte of Pain. And either of those cards forces him into a weird situation.
Okay, so now that he's drawn another Frostbolt, he can just Frostbolt an Iceland's face.
Yeah.
An easy way to get rid of cards.
Still, though, sometimes the initial burn that you can put on your opponent, like right now, feels like a wasted card.
Okay, so he doesn't use the Ice Lance here because he might get more value from Archmage Antonidas in the following turns. But with this line of play, it leaves him open to overdrawing in like turn 7 or turn 8.
You want to keep your hand around 7 or 8 cards, just so you have room to maneuver with cards like Archmage Antonidas. it seems weird, but
Oh, you know what? Actually, last turn there was a Mad Scientist on the field, so playing Ice Block would have been actually useless. So Ice Berry was definitely the correct choice.
Yeah.
So you can Acolyte and ping here, but you risk overdrawing yet again. The other play is Blizzard the board, Frost Nova Frost Nova the board.
Wow, really effective Frost Nova there.
Yeah, it's really cold. Chilled me to the bone.
Oh, man. See, this is another one of those awkward situations. He can't play Ice Block. He can't really play Acolyte of Pain by itself. Because then again, he risks overdrawing.
So, yeah, this, I think Reynad is actually really regretting not playing the Ice Lance in the previous turn.
Yeah. Like this turn, he's going to have to Acolyte and then Doomsayer. And even if he does that, he's still going to get overdrawn for a card next turn. So if he does that play, then he has to throw out something as well.
He's considering just throwing out the Archmage Antonidas, but that also doesn't agree with this previous turn where he just he saved the Ice Lance specifically for Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah, and if he throws the Archmage Antonidas here without using any spells, because he was forced to throw out coin and made that decision to hold on to Ice Lances, if he gets Fireballed and pinged next turn, then he's in a lot of trouble. He's thinking about just throwing out a Fireball here just to get cards out of his hand. I mean, yeah, it is burn onto the face, but sometimes it can feel like burn used before you have enough to finish off your opponent.
Yeah.
Can sometimes feel like it's wasted.
Oh, Emperor.
But there's a Doomsayer sitting on the other side of the board.
I think you might just go for it.
Just to reduce the cost of the... I mean, there's not really many substantial cards in his hand that will benefit a lot from being reduced by Emperor Thor's hand.
Yeah, that's true. Still, though, if you draw into Archmage, you can, for example, Archmage and possibly Frost Nova into a 1-mana spell later on. Also, you can just ping your Acolyte for 1 more draw. And then you can reduce... reducing a handful of, like, 8 cards is still really good. Oh, that's huge!
Yeah. I mean, he's going to save it for 1 more turn, I think. Which I'm okay with. Another useless draw for Reynad. Can't play either of these secrets.
So you just Blizzard the board, ping his face?
Yeah.
Acolyte is also very dangerous.
If he Acolytes, then he might want to not ping it. He can Acolyte and then just do nothing else. Yeah. Unless he's thinking about using Frostbolt or Ice Lance here, he'll be at 9 cards after he pings this Acolyte. So Chaki could mill a card the following turn. Okay, well that's something that he can throw away.
Yeah, that's good. I also think that Reynad might not be considered, not be too worried about milling because all the cards in his hand are just really good. And he might just be able to kill Chaki with with his hand currently, especially with the Archmage.
Yeah. I think this is a definite Emperor turn.
Emperor perhaps into Frost Nova.
What to do?
I mean, he might think about Alexstrasza, but I feel like this is sort of going to be one of those slugfest matches, and if he's using Emperor Thor's hand with Archmage Antonidas in his hand, he's going to have a lot of burn. So he might even want to have Alexstrasza as a defensive tool. Because it looks like Reynad's sort of, as much as you can be the aggressor in this matchup, Reynad seems to be the one that's the aggressor. Because he's throwing a few spells at the face.
Well, not only... Well, the problem with Emperor for Reynad is that Reynad actually has to deal with it now.
Yeah.
And I don't see any good ways for him to deal with it. He has to either... I guess he has to Flame Strike here.
Yeah.
You don't want to really give up your Frost Ice Lance turn.
Then he'll have to play the Mad Scientist afterwards.
Yeah, and definitely not the Loot Hoarder.
Yeah. Because again, if he's Flame Striking here and throwing in the Acolyte of Pain, I mean, either way, whether or not he Flame Strikes or pings it, then he has the potential to overdraw the following turn.
Yeah, this is kind of funny. Both players have full hands, and they both have 2 secrets up with the remaining 2 secrets also in their hands. So no Mad Scientist will become useful later on. Oh, wow. Okay, so he can do this and Frostbolt Ice Lance.
Yeah. No, he'll have to double Ice Lance.
Okay, double Ice Lance, yeah.
I mean, he's effectively turning those Ice Lances into Fireballs, which is more damage, but he's actually going to overdraw next turn.
Yeah, but again, unless he overdraws Alexstrasza, I don't think he's going to be worried. It's the same concept as what Chaki was trying to do the previous turn. Now Reynad has put up a threat that Chaki has to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost certainly going to be a Fireball here.
Yeah. You can Fireball Blood Mage and...
What to do?
Or Archmage, Blood Mage Fireball.
Yeah, I like it.
And I don't think he's at a risk of overdrawing. Off 7 cards, yeah, he's A-okay.
Yeah, now I think...
Oh! That is terrible.
That is the worst card in the deck to mill, I feel.
Yeah, either that or Archmage Antonidas. And now he doesn't have Alexstrasza or Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah. Now I also have to note that Reynad is running 2 loot hoarders in this deck. And if you're running 2 loot hoarders, that means almost certainly you're not going to be running the anti-heal bot.
Mm-hmm.
There's one flex bot these days in Freeze Mage, and it's either loot hoarder, anti-kill bot, or Kona Cold.
Mm-hmm.
So with no anti-kill bot in this deck, Reynad's all going to be even more trouble.
Yeah, and now he knows that without Alexstrasza, every point of burn that he has in his hand matters. He's been through both Ice Lances. He's used 1 Frostbolt and 1 Fireball. These 2 Fireballs are both from Antonidas, so he's got these 2, the 1 Frostbolt.
No, he doesn't have any Frostbolts anymore.
Well, he has one in his hand.
Yeah, okay, the 1 Frostbolt.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So in his deck still, he has 1 Fireball and maybe Pyroblast. Pyroblast or Malagos.
Yeah.
So,
Chaki looks to be in a dominating position because he's going to be the one that's going to be able to use Alexstrasza to deal 14 damage here. Whereas Reynad, he had to deal the first damage with just regular burn.
Mm-hmm. And Reynad also doesn't have Alexstrasza to fall back on to use as a defensive tool. So, and he doesn't have a way to deal with Alexstrasza itself.
Yeah, he's been throwing away all his freezes, right?
Yeah.
I guess he has to just Blizzard the board.
Yeah. He'll have to Blizzard. He threw away both Frost Novas, I do believe.
Oh, that's interesting. So now Chaki's plan is to just straight go for burn to the face, and then Alexstrasza himself.
Yeah, because he knows that Reynad just has a finite amount of damage left in his deck. Without Archmage Antonidas, there's no way that Reynad could get any more damage.
Yeah, that's actually really smart.
Yeah,
I like that. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So there's the last piece of burn. I think that's both natural fireballs. 2 Fireballs from Antonidas, and he's used both Frostbolts and both Ice Lances. He'll have a Pyroblast left in his deck, most likely, and that's it.
New Arcane Intellect. Again, a pretty interesting turn because Chaki doesn't have any AoE, so he's going to Frostbolt, or rather Frost Nova. He might actually be able to get off Frost Nova Doomsayer against an opposing Freeze Mage, and it's actually going to be good.
Well, okay, so one thing that we have to worry about here also is the fact that Chaki actually doesn't have that much damage left either. I mean, I suppose he still has Frostbolts left in his deck, but he's been through his Archmage Antonidas as well. But I suppose once he actually gets Reynad to low health, he can be pretty patient here and try and make sure that he gets him as close to 1 as possible before he pops the block, maybe even to exactly 1.
I wonder if Chaki is making the read that Reynad probably doesn't have an anti-heal bot either, because he does see the 2 loot hoarders, and I'm sure he's he's researching a lot into all the decks in the metagame right now.
Yeah. Emperor Thorsan, a lot of players will tell you that having Emperor Thorsan first in the Freeze Mage mirror,
it's huge.
Yeah, it's really huge. Gives you a big advantage. So I'm sure Reynad's not happy about seeing that in his last 5-6 cards.
I feel like in this game, though, it didn't matter as much per se, because Archmage Antonidas wasn't used to get like 3 or 4 fireballs. It was just 2, and that's, I guess, an acceptable number.
So how do you approach these turns as Reynad? What do you He knows that Alexstrasza is still there.
Yeah.
So just Fireball, just popping the block this turn and bringing him to 1 and expending all your burn.
I mean, what other
It's not a
choice do
smart
you
play.
have?
Yeah, you have to sort of just hope that he doesn't have it. You
Yeah.
can't Emperor Thorson here. Well, you can, but it's just going to get killed by the Doomsayer. The cards that you have in your hand don't really benefit from being Emperor Thorson in that match. I mean, of course, yeah, every card benefits from it, but it's not going to give him a substantial enough advantage. But he's got to go for it anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, the problem is he doesn't have. Okay, I see what he's trying to do. There's a Frostbolt left in. Oh, look at that, Kazan Mystic.
Wow.
That's wow. I get it now. That play from Reynad made complete sense. That Reynad teched in a Kazan Mystic into his deck.
Yeah.
And that actually, he has a 50% to win the game now.
He's out of cards. That's it.
Oh, wow. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. That was well played by Chaki, putting him exactly at 1, knowing he was fatigued. Of course, Ice Block cannot pop on your own turn. So if you take fatigue damage, you are going to die.
Yeah.
And, I mean, a little bit unfortunate for Reynad, but really well played by Chaki.
Yeah, certainly. Especially unfortunate for Reynad because Reynad, he teched in that Kazan Mystic. It was his last card, and also he now that Chaki's Face Hunter has been eliminated, and Chaki's Freeze Mage has also won a game, now that Kazan Mystic is going to be dead in future matchups.
Yeah, that's really, really rough. Burning Alexstrasza,
Yeah.
Emperor Thorsan, and Kazan Mystic, 2 key cards in that matchup in his bottom 4.
Yeah, and I think it somewhat comes back to the turn where Reynad decided not to use the Ice Lance.
Yeah.
And it ended up, that was actually the reason why Alexstrasza was burned.
He basically traded the Ice Lance for an Alexstrasza, which I would take Alexstrasza 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100. But we are going to move into this 4th matchup. Chaki does have a 2-1 lead in the series. Chaki only needs 1 more win to move on to the day's finals to face Strifecrow.
Oh, actually, so Chaki still has his Face Hunter, and this Freeze Mage is going to be a really favorable matchup because generally most players say Freeze Mage is favored against Hunter, and it's even going to be more favored if you run a Kazan Mystic, of course.
Yeah, we actually talked about this matchup earlier in the week. I mean, of course, we've seen so many games so far.
We talked about every matchup.
Yeah, we basically talked about every matchup.
Except Shaman Mirror.
Shaman Mirror. We have not talked about Shaman Mirror. That is very true. Might be seeing some more Shaman. I saw a lot of players experimenting with it today with the new Blackrock Mountain card. But of course, these players submitted their deck lists as a reminder before Blackrock Mountain cards were released today, so they were not able to use those. But yeah, one of the key things in this matchup for the Mage is Ice Barriers early on in the game to try and block some of that damage. And basically, they're just trying to run the Hunter out of damage. Eventually, they'll empty their hand. They'll be out of cards, trying to top deck. And as long as the Mage is still healthy at that point, they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah. Firebad is quoted as saying, for example, that if the Mage is able to get 2 Ice Barriers up before the game ends, then it's like almost 100% chance of winning.
Yeah. Of course, we don't see Ice Barriers yet, but lots of card draw.
Yeah, this hand from Reynad is, I would say, pretty good. Maybe he'd like a Frostbolt to deal with Knife Jugglers, but I think he's pretty happy here.
Yeah.
Pretty aggressive start from Chaki, but it's... I mean, Mad Scientist generally isn't that good in this matchup because explosive traps, and generally most traps besides freezing are fairly dead.
I feel like it's hard not to have an aggressive start
Oh, that's a good one.
as Face Hunter in any matchup. Yeah.
Possibly better than
Huffer,
Huffer, yeah.
because it can't just get traded into and pinged off. Actually has to be dealt with actually maybe even a Blood Mage Thanos and a Frostbolt.
Okay, that's interesting. So, Reynad has a choice to Blood Mage Thanos and Frostbolt here. I generally feel like the Fireball is less valuable in this matchup, but I think Reynad goes for this play just to develop the Blood Mage Thanos.
Yeah. And of course, developing the Blood Mage Thanos in order to get to draw into key cards slightly quicker.
Yeah, not only that, 1/1 body is actually really amazing against Hunter.
Trades 1 for 1. And in fact, nearly 2 for 1 because you get a card draw out of it as well. still so much draw left in the hand of Reynad. Arcane Intellect plus a second Acolyte of Pain.
Yep, Doomsayer is going to be really good.
Yeah. Doomsayer's a lot of times just thrown on the board in this matchup just to stop momentum.
Okay, 2 ice blocks, but unfortunately no ice barrier, which is actually the more important secret in the matchup.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's the mad scientist. So eventually this ice barrier is going to come out.
Eventually.
Especially if Chaki decides to silence its Doomsayer and regain momentum. Chaki actually doesn't have to, though. It's coming up to onto turn 6, in which Blizzard will be effective. So he might not want to develop the board here and just fit in more hero powers. But again, that's generally against the Freeze Mage that's drawn so much. It's probably maybe a losing play.
I think Kill Command is while you have a beast on the board. Just to fit your curve.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I like it.
Yeah. Otherwise, again, playing around Blizzard. Also just playing around the Doomsayer that's on the board. Doing damage from the hand. Probably a better choice in the situation.
So Reynad actually has to worry about dying on the following turn.
He does. 3 cards in the hand, that's scary against Face Hunter. He's going to opt to draw. If he throws down Acolyte of Pain here, I mean, I guess he could Frost Nova as well. Yeah. Frost Nova.
So I think what Chaki really wants to do here is to put as much damage onto Reynad's face as possible in the following turns. Like,
whoa!
Yeah, even Arcane Golem, because if he gets all that damage in, and there's going to be...
He can pop the block next turn. He actually has to Ice Block next turn. That's going to be 3 of his mana.
Yeah, so basically with this play, this ice barriers are useless now, because Chaki can always just ping the face to deal that extra 2 damage.
Yeah, he's going to need Alexstrasza in the next, actually the next card, or the next couple cards, because he'll have draws with this Acolyte. He can buy himself a couple turns with the Ice Block, with both Ice Blocks. But this is looking pretty grim. We might be on the verge of seeing Chaki move on.
Yeah, pretty amazing here. It did seem like Reynad had such a strong start, but Chaki just had the right aggression and the right top deck of Arcane Golem.
Yeah.
In order to put Reynad at this tenuous position. If that Arcane Golem were even like a Wolf Rider, this game would change so much.
Yeah, because he would be able to put him to 3, but he wouldn't threaten popping the block with just the hero power alone. Yeah. And
I'm not sure about the... Okay, so he plays both these creatures.
Yeah.
The Mad Scientist, even though it's not useful for bringing out Ice Barrier, it is useful for thinning out the deck. So more possibility to draw Alexstrasza in the next few turns.
Yeah, and he knows that there's no point of freezing here because the block is going to get popped the next turn. So what he wants to do is just try and, again, like you said, maximize the chances that he draws Alexstrasza next turn. Throwing out the Loot Hoarder, thinning out the deck with his Mad Scientist, and throwing down the Owl to try and reduce the chance that he draws into something substantial next turn.
Yeah,
it's probably the right play.
The name of the game here is all about just reducing the chances for, adding chances for Reynad to draw the draw the Alexstrasza from his side, and for Chaki to reduce the chances of Reynad drawing Alexstrasza. I mean, usually that's a huge draw, but
yeah.
Oh no! So again, this Loot Hoarder, it could have been an anti-Keelbot.
Yeah, he's gonna have 2 more turns to draw into this. He's got to develop Ice Block this turn. That's not an Alexstrasza. And there's actually no way that he can... He just doesn't have enough damage in his hand to be able to develop Ice Block, plus trying to burst Chaki down. He's basically going to be on an Alexstrasza draw. And there is a chance that even if he does, well, no. He can actually Ice Block here, plus clear the board. And then his only out will be Alexstrasza next turn.
I do feel like you have to clear the board on this turn.
Yeah. Or else you risk, even if you do have Alexstrasza, he might have enough damage to kill you anyway.
I think you at least have to clear part of the board, and you can do so by pinging plus frostbolting. Like a middle of the road play would be to Ice Block and then ping Frostbolt and Loot Hoarder, and that would give you 1 more chance to draw Alexstrasza. The other play is perhaps Blizzarding, and that clears the entire board, but it only gives you one turn to draw Alexstrasza. Or one card to draw Alexstrasza.
I do like the middle ground.
Yeah. You basically trade off 2 more damage on the board for an additional chance to draw Alexstrasza.
Yeah. And it's whether or not you want to balance losing right now or losing after the Alexstrasza. And yeah.
Yep. So,
all right.
yeah, indeed, it's going to be that middle of the road play, which usually we criticize middle of the road plays, but I think, yeah, this was certainly the best play.
All right, here we go. 2 draws for Alexstrasza. How many cards does he have left in his deck? Let's see if we can see before he comes out. Come on, spectator. There we go.
Oh,
the mouse is alive.
17.
11 cards.
So 2 in 11. That's about 1 in 5.
That's not very likely. Here we go. We'll see the first. Ice barrier.
It's useless.
1 more draw. Essentially, Reynad's tournament life for the World Cyber Arena Pro Qualifier is on a single draw. And that's just to keep him alive. That doesn't necessarily guarantee him a win.
Don't see any reason not to equip the Eagle Horn here.
Yeah.
The Explosive Trap is actually kind of a hindrance.
Oh! The last card that he needed. And of course, we say that. Great, that's what he needed. Oh, Chaki rolls his eyes slightly. But he's not out of the woods yet. There's still an Explosive Trap up, another Explosive Trap available. He still does not have that much burn left in his hand, especially since he's using one of these Ice Lances just to avoid some damage. Mad Scientist, though, not a great draw.
Yeah, not a great draw at all. Alexstrasza, I think, just wins Reynad the game because now the Ice Barriers are active. Oh, speaking of Ice Barrier, here we go.
He's got 2 of them, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be 16 additional HP for Reynad.
Yep, plus he has Archmage Antonitis. He can actually Archmage Antonitis, Ice Barrier here, and then basically put Chaki on the clock.
Yeah, he doesn't even have to attack into Chaki's face with this Alexstrasza.
Yeah.
What to do?
He can just not give him the charges from the bow and just rely on spells to win the game. With so much life gain in his hand. Because Chaki's not going to be able to win by just trying to hero power or kill him with spells alone. Just not going to happen.
Yeah. Hunter doesn't have enough draw cards. And Reynad can even never pop this Explosive Trap. And if he doesn't, then Quick Shot will be dead.
Yep. Wow. Such a turnaround.
Yeah, I think Alexstrasza is repaying him back for being burned.
Yeah, exactly.
Game.
Coming at the exact right time. I mean, still, Alexstrasza was in his last 10 cards. So, a lot of these cards have sat dead in his hand for a lot of the game. It could have been any. But she came just in time.
Alright. I really love Alexstrasza's golden portrait, by the way.
Yeah.
Look at that fire-breathing dragon.
It is a fire-breathing dragon.
Okay, so with this lineup play, Reynad, he sets up lethal on the next turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think Chaki can find a way out of this. Because in order to win, he has to pop the Ice Barrier. But if he pops the Ice Barrier, then he loses regardless. Looks like that's game over.
Yeah, what a turnaround again. Just almost a 1 in 5 for Reynad to win that game. And he exactly draws the right card, and it's just... With that one card, it changes from almost 100% to lose, or exactly 100% to lose, to 99.999% chance to win.
Yeah. And Reynad just sipping on his juice, or whatever's in that mug, like he planned it all along.
Yeah. It's probably, I would say that's probably a warm drink, perhaps tea or coffee, because I did see him pouring something out of like a coffee.
He is a big fan of tea.
Coffee pot.
He is a big fan of tea.
Reynad being very zen at this moment.
All right.
Yeah, Chaki knows he can't win, We've seen a lot of somewhat like premature concedes when players know they can't win, but they just don't play out the game in this today.
Yeah, it's not like he needs scouting information. He basically knows. He's seen almost every card. He got him to fatigue him. He didn't see every card played from his hand, but he can most likely assume what's going to come out with that Freeze Mage deck. So both players only have one deck remaining. Reynad does have his Warlock.
Yep.
And Chaki has the Hunter.
Yeah. Now, depending on what kind of Warlock this is, either deck might have an advantage. If it's handlocked, then certainly Chaki will have an advantage. If it's a zoo, then it's kind of more close to even. Of course, we know that Chaki is running double explosive traps. He's running double Unleash the Hound, so those two cards will certainly help him in the matchup.
Yeah, I think the Face Hunter versus Zoolock matchup is 60-40 in favor of the Face Hunter.
Yeah, I think that's very fair as well.
Yeah. A lot of that's from personal experience with trying out the new zoo. I've played a lot of variations of it over the past couple days, and the matchup against Hunter is very tough. It's very tough.
Well, the problem with the new zoo and Imp Gang boss in particular is that the effective Imp Gang boss is sometimes kind of a hindrance because it lets your opponent summon more hounds.
Yeah. Bane of Doom into Mal'Ganis is one of the ways that I've defeated the almighty Face Hunter. But again, we still have not seen this Warlock deck from Reynad just yet. He is the father of Zoo. So maybe he'll
not only is the father
throw
of
out
Zoo,
his child,
but he claims that he plays handlock better than anyone in the world, except perhaps Kalento.
Yeah, he actually he became popular not by playing handlock, but when he was rising in popularity, he almost exclusively played handlock when he first started streaming, and that was before Zoo was ever even created. So people always associate Reynad with Zoo. But if you go back farther, then Reynad actually has more connections and more ties with the evolution of handlock from the very beginning.
Now the game has started, and okay, it's gonna be Zoo.
Zoo or some next level handlock.
Well, you know, we have seen some like more mid-range demon locks from players such as Kalento.
Yeah.
And Kalento, he actually plays one Flame Imp in his deck, and it's partly because against decks like Face Hunter, Flame Imps oftentimes it's kind of a liability in the matchup, especially because we can see a response of the Mad Scientist here, which is going to trade so favorably against the Flame Imp, and possibly even put up an explosive trap.
Yeah, and this is a decent hand for Chaki. Of course, he'd probably want those kill commands to be something else, but having the Knife Juggler and Unleash the Hounds combination, or even just those two cards in general, are really great against this matchup.
Is there any reason to not trade here? I don't think Glaive Zuka matters too much. And this is actually pretty bad for Chaki. Now, this Iron Beak Owl is getting so much value, it's going to somewhat 2 for 1, because the Explosive Trap, I guess, counts for 1 as well. So it gets rid of an Explosive Trap, possibly gets rid of a Knife Juggler as well. So this might be a turn where Chaki just hero powers. He does have the Knife Juggler Unleashed on turn 5. It's just the problem that he doesn't have any other plays besides that in the following turn. The kill commands are fairly dead. The Arcane Golems are fairly dead. Those are the more situational cards in this matchup. Yeah.
I don't think he's really worried about playing it a little bit slower and just hero powering this turn. Just because as long as he's putting out some type of threat every turn, like the Arcane Golem next turn, a lot of times the Warlock player just does damage control.
Yeah, so Chaki, once again, he goes for face here because it's really up to the Zoo here to trade.
Yeah. You can use that to your advantage as the Hunter player, and a lot of times they do. You know that it's always, the onus is on the Warlock to trade, because they're the ones that are in the most danger of dying the quickest.
Yeah. Abuse the Sergeant, certainly very risky here. But you might actually want to put a minion on the board just because of Implosion. So I think Chaki might be considering just the plain Arcane Golem.
Yeah.
And Arcane Golem here, I guess you would be able to punish it with... if your opponent implosions, then you get to punish it with Unleash the Hounds on turn 4.
Then, yeah. It's like both players are punishing, but they actually decides to go with the kill command. So
Yeah, just a lot of variation for Chaki, switching between going for the defensive plays and the offensive plays. And I guess he just thinks that the knife juggler is too threatening for the board to have.
yeah, this is a kind of a rough hand. Nerubian Egg can be good sometimes, especially you play it when you're gonna pop an explosive trap. But Doom Guard, hello. Okay, we're back.
I guess just
Arcane Golem and Abusive Sergeant.
yeah. Or okay.
Wow.
I was gonna say Eagle Horn, but I actually once you mentioned that play, might have liked that better.
Yeah, the Abusive Sergeant, you're guaranteed to get value out of immediately, but also he does have Unleash the Hounds. If he didn't have Unleash the Hounds, I think that play would have been different.
I think what he's actually worried about is if you do the play where you put minions on the board, the Nerubian Egg could get popped fairly easily. Like now, Reynad, his play of Power Overwhelming is not as good, and his play of Direwolf Alpha is also not as good. Plus, he has a lot of reactive cards like Implosion and Mortal Coil, and those plays aren't as good either. So this might just be a plain Doomguard turn.
Yeah. I don't think you're really worried about losing these other cards that are in your hand, especially Implosion, because a lot of times Implosion, you talked about it a little bit earlier, you mentioned it, can sometimes work against you.
Yeah.
Just making for bigger Unleash turns. And at some point, you have to start being the aggressor as Easy Warlock. You're going to have to race eventually. Eventually, it is going to come down to who can kill their opponent first. And you know that the Hunter is going to put on consistent damage every turn. Your hero power is working against you, but it looks like he is going to go for the Power Overwhelming play.
Okay, if he goes for this play, he has to consider whether he wants to tap or not. And because he didn't tap first, he doesn't, and he's basically planning for a Doomguard in the following turn, so he doesn't really need the cards, I guess.
Yeah. Arcane Golem, Abusive Sergeant, Leper Gnome.
I wonder.
If you do that, you're effectively doing 9 damage plus a guaranteed 11 damage with Leper Gnome on the board.
Yep.
And you also have Unleash the Hound's kill command in the following turn.
Yeah. I feel like this is not a matchup where you need to fit in a lot of hero powers because the Warlock is damaging himself anyway.
He's doing it for you. Yeah. And this way, I mean, you know that your opponent is at a point where they have to make the decision to either race or keep clearing their board. And if they race, you know that you're going to get value out of Unleash the Hounds. Yeah. Oh, double Implosion.
Oh, it's going to be so bad for Reynad.
Yeah.
Oh, double Doomguard!
Oh, no.
Oh,
He basically has to Doomguard here and hope that the Doomguard discards the Implosions. I mean, he can Implosion here on the Arcane Golem, but that's just so risky because eventually those Doomguards are going to have to be played. And the longer they sit in your hand, and the more cards that you're playing while the Doomguards are sitting in your hand, the more likely you are to have a turn where you have nothing to play but a Doomguard, but that time it's too late.
We know which one of these plays would be better from our perspective because we can see both hands.
Yeah. He might be thinking about Implosion just so he might not have it, just to try and make him have it. But I don't think you're ever going to find a time to play these Doomguards if you don't play one now.
He's hovering between both options. He's clearly not made his mind up yet. Alright, it's going to be
Gotta go for it. I mean, if he discards both Implosions, he's in a pretty good spot. Oh. Gotta raise.
Oh, so okay. So if he races here, that's 6 on the board.
He's 1 off. If he Animal Companions and roll Huffer, he wins. If he Unleash the Hounds, he's 1 off lethal, I believe.
I think what he can do here is Animal Companion.
Assess.
Assess, exactly. Like pretty much everything except Leok would be good.
Yeah.
Misha prevents damage as well. And if you roll like Misha, for instance,
here we go.
You can kill command.
Oh!
The worst one. So you can still kill command, and your opponent won't have lethal unless he top decks. Well, he just won't have lethal anyway because he discarded the Doomguard.
Yeah. So still in a good spot here.
Yeah, I would say a very good spot.
He's seen one power overwhelming. He saw the Doomguard discarded.
This
So-
actually, it might be a turn where he could be considering Unleash the Hound here as well. Because it does something similar, I guess. It clears off the Nerubian egg.
Yeah.
Or the Nerubian spider, rather.
And he knows he's almost guaranteed to have a beast on the board next turn. And this way he gets the damage in while he can.
Yeah.
In case there's like a Void Walker that comes out the next turn. Or maybe a Defender Vargas. He can still have kill command. Oh, there's a Void Walker.
That alone certainly is going to be enough.
I think that might do it.
I think, yeah, unless Reynad can come up with some form of heal, he's dead.
Yeah, there's guaranteed lethal no matter how he slices it. Even if he takes a beast off the board and plays... Actually, no. Yeah. Even if he implosions here, there's still going to be one beast left on the board. There's going to be direct damage in hand. He can hope that there's not. He can hope that Void Walker is going to stop enough damage to where he might be able to buy himself another turn to maybe draw into like a second power overwhelming if he runs it, which is unlikely. Or an abusive sergeant, something to be able to end the game. And that is going to do it. He even had the Unleash as the cherry on top. And Chaki is going to be your player moving on to face Strife Crow in the finals for today. The final day of the World Cyber Arena North American Qualifier. And Chaki versus Strife Crow is actually going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, I guess both those players are the players that have more success over their counterparts. Strife Crow is obviously one of the most successful players ever. Chaki has had a lot of second place finishes. Although if you consider Reynad's first place finish in Battle of the Best, Reynad actually has more first place finishes than Chaki.
Yeah.
So perhaps Reynad is the more successful player, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But that was a close match nonetheless. Reynad did play pretty well. He had some unfortunate circumstances there, but also that the Alex Straza draw to win the game against Hunter. He gave himself one more game to survive, but couldn't end up closing it out with that Zoo Warlock. But we have one more match to come at you tonight. It's going to be Chaki versus Strife Crow. We just want to remind you guys to go ahead and follow us on Twitter, WCA_America, or you can use the hashtag WCA2015. Let us know your predictions for the finals. Let us know what you guys thought about the matches that have taken place this week and what you're looking forward to about those qualifier land finals. But we are going to have one more match. We're going to go to a short break, but Chaki versus Strife Crow, the final match of the evening, right after this.